I rise to oppose the amendment. I'd like to speak to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle on their proposed budget. But first of all, I'd like to say that I have great confidence in my leadership. Our Speaker and our Majority Leader sacrificed this summer working very hard to make sure that we all had an opportunity to have input in what should have been a bipartisan budget. And I believe they worked in good faith to make that happen. And I believe that there was really not the will. Politics got in the way. This budget is a disaster. Representative Staffstrom spoke about its effect on the cities. Representative Haddad spoke about its effect on our kids, our college kids, the future. I agree with them. This is a budget that cannot be supported. The fact is, Governor Malloy has already stated that this is a dead letter and that he will veto this budget. The governor makes some good points on why he's against the budget, some of the same points that were made by people who spoke previously. I have many concerns. One of them is the lack of funds for the citizen selection program, which is going to allow the proliferation of dark money. I think that's a disaster for the democratic process. You know, there was a lot of talk that came out from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle about the 2011 taxes and how we had raised the taxes and yet not been able to produce the kind of revenue that the state needs. Well, if we're honest about it, it's because salaries in Connecticut have continued in a downward spiral since the 2008 disaster in Wall Street. And as salaries go down and people that made $80,000 have to settle for a job that pays $60,000, those that made $60,000 have to settle for a job that pays $40,000. And as salaries continue in a downward spiral, it's no surprise that our state income tax is not producing the revenue, that our sales tax is not producing the revenue. We have to be about the working people in Connecticut. There's a truth in the fact that no matter how high taxes are, you can't get blood out of a stone. We have to help Connecticut working families earn a living wage. Now, we talked different ideas. CBIA opposed taxing the big box stores, which was an initiative my colleague Peter Terziak talked about. When I came to Hartford in 1972 as a young teacher, almost every neighborhood had a neighborhood pharmacy owned by the neighborhood pharmacists who paid property taxes to the city of Hartford, who spent their money supporting other businesses in the Hartford area. Today, the CVS's, the Walgreens, the Walmarts, all these big box stores are like a giant vacuum cleaner sucking every profit out of the state of Connecticut for Wall Street investors who may live who knows where. Saudi Arabia, Germany, who knows? But the money doesn't recirculate in our economy, yet we subsidize the workforce of these big box stores. We subsidize them through our taxpayer monies. Yet CBIA parades the small business people and says, oh, this will hurt, you know, raising salaries will hurt the small businessmen. No. Raising salaries would help the small business person. Those small neighborhood businesses would be helped if people in their neighborhoods had a little discretionary cash that they could spend in their businesses. Sometimes we're victims of our own biases, our own prejudices, and we grow up with them and we don't even see them. This attitude that is reflected in this budget, which is let Hartford go bankrupt. I represent the city of Hartford. The South End neighborhood, which includes Little Italy. Many of you may be familiar with Carbone's restaurant in the South End, an institution there. It's a working class neighborhood. Let me tell you something about the city. And I mean this as no criticism of modern day West Hartford, which is a great community, has a strong middle class. But some of you may not know the origin. When Reverend Hooker founded Hartford, West Hartford was part of the city of Hartford. But at that time, most of the wealthy white Anglo-Saxon Protestants who lived in that section during the 1845 Irish famine, when immigrants started coming into the center of Hartford, decided that they didn't want to share their wealth with those papists, dirty scum immigrants that were coming into the city, and petitioned to make West Hartford a separate town. 1854, the legislature granted the town of West Hartford its own charter, and it came into existence. Today, West Hartford has a vibrant middle-class community. It's very diverse. So it's no reflection on modern-day West Hartford. But this attitude has always existed, especially when people who live in the center cities happen to be, many of them, black and Puerto Rican. Different. Just like those WASP look down on those Irish immigrants. And, you know, the sad thing is, as time goes by, many people forget their immigrant roots. Many people who suffered as Italians, as Jews, as Irish, as Polish, now adopt the same attitude as the WASPs, who, by the way, themselves were immigrants. And here we are today, 2017, and some of these attitudes have become so cultural and so ingrained in this country that people actually believe it's a good thing that the city of Hartford goes under. Well, let me tell you something about the city of Hartford. The city of Hartford is a city of 120,000 people, of which maybe 30,000 are carrying the tax burden. And those 30,000 are carrying a tax burden for a region that's 1.5 million people. That's why it doesn't work. That's why it needs help. We have the hospitals, we have the recreation, we have the Excel Center, we have the Meadows Theater, we have all these services, we have the halfway houses. You know, it's a great thing to live in Avon or in Simsbury and Farmington, but you know what? If you get a pink slip, there's no low-income housing there for you. You got to move to Hartford to find an apartment for your family. You're one paycheck away from being disinvited from your country club. I represent the city of Hartford. I'll tell you what, if Hartford becomes the next Detroit, and by the way, we had a commitment of $50,000 from the corporate community if we were able to balance our budget. $10,000 every year for 5 years, it's going to go away and disappear. And our mayor, Luke Bronin, is going to have to declare bankruptcy if we don't get the state aid. And you know what? Why are we in the hole? Because as the state of Connecticut has exempted properties from taxation, we were supposed to be reimbursed through the pilot program, which has never been fully funded. So the problems are structural, created by our own institutions. The hypocrisy oozes. It oozes. People have told me many times, Ed, why don't you keep your opinions, go back to where you came from? And I'll say, yeah, maybe one day I will go back to Brooklyn, New York. Maybe they can deport me back to Brooklyn, New York. I'll tell you what, if Hartford goes under, there is not one rural area, one suburban area that's not going to feel it. Some of you may say, well, maybe the inner ring suburbs will feel it. Maybe West Hartford, Wethersfield, Bloomfield, Windsor, the inner ring suburbs might feel it. But you know what? If the inner ring suburbs like East Hartford, you know, if Pratt and Whitney leaves, if Travelers leaves, if we become a next void here, think about where the employment centers are, right? It's the center city. If we lose those 5,000 jobs that Aetna has left here temporarily while their leadership went to Boston. And by the way, that's the other narrative we hear from the other side of the aisle. We hear the narrative that we're a high-tax state, high-salary state, and that's why people are leaving. No, people left. Where did they go? Boston, higher taxes, higher salaries. Where did Aetna, the CEO, go? Manhattan, higher salaries, higher taxes. That's not why people are leaving Connecticut. They're leaving because young people want vibrant cities. They want us to invest in our urban areas. Now, I know the urban areas are very ethnic, and maybe they're more diverse than some other communities out there. But you know what? The cities are going to survive. The cities are going to survive because this budget, which is a disaster, is going to go down. And we're going to work on a budget, and it should be a bipartisan budget. And I know our leadership has done everything in their power to try to make this budget a bipartisan budget. And I know that they will continue to sacrifice what's left of the summer, which they've sacrificed away from their families, to continue to try to reach across the other side of the aisle. But let's stop the hypocrisy. This is not a real budget for the future of Connecticut. You know, the northeast corner, nice and quiet, northeast corner, go and ask those little towns, those little rural areas, Columbia, Bolton, how many people there work in the city of Hartford? If Hartford becomes the next Detroit and those pink slips start going, that's not just going to hurt the inner city and its surrounding suburbs. It's going to go far and wide. I know people that commute 45 minutes a day coming to the city of Hartford to work. I know people all the way from Springfield, Massachusetts on the other side of the border that come for a job in the city of Hartford. Thousands and thousands of jobs in this city. And what are we going to do? We're going to tell the city of Hartford, drop dead with this budget, not with my vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.